Hey everybody, new video coming. Don't know when this video is gonna come up. My schedule is still a little bit weird. Had to figure out when I could record this video. I wanted to do a little bit of more watching the series and kind of picking up more about what happened, simply because it had been a while since I've watched it. I chose to, or I decided to do this series after the season 2 premiere came out, and I watched that. And so I had to go back and rewatch all of season 1 to try and get these notes. I tried to do as well as I could for episodes 1 through 4, but it was uh, kind of more difficult. I had less to talk about than I would have liked. That being said, first thing I want to mention is this video is full of spoilers. It's just going to be full of spoilers, and I forgot to mention that at the beginning of the first episode, of the first video. The previous video, whatever. I forgot to mention it at the beginning of the previous video. I mentioned it a few minutes later on, but even then, like, that's on shaky ground. I should have mentioned it right at the beginning. So, spoiler alert ahead for these videos, and just a heads up on that. Second of all, I forgot to go into detail into the characters. So, one, I'm just gonna go through the characters really quickly, except for 5. I'm gonna get into detail with 5, but that's for later on. 1, you don't really learn much about him. 1 is kind of, suffice it to say, for me, 1 is potentially the most boring character on the ship, on the series, which is a little strange, because he is kind of portrayed as the almost lead role. Like, you kind of, it's kind of, the episode is written so that you kind of watch it through his eyes, kind of thing. You watch it from his point of view. Not necessarily what he sees, but kind of the way it's written just naturally tries to cement him as the main character. He's not actually the main character, but it's just kind of focused around him, kind of thing. Which does not work well with the fact that he's just a really boring character. Like, nobody cares really about him. He doesn't have anything special about him. He's not particularly good at anything. So he doesn't really have any skills or talents that the others don't have. He does not have, obviously he doesn't have a backstory yet, so you can't care about that. And the biggest thing for me is just, well, nobody really, he's portrayed as this character who has really good morals and is always trying to do the right thing, but it never really amounts to anything. Like, it never seems to do anything, it never seems to change anything. Like, the character who he is just doesn't do anything in the episodes. He's just kind of there to fill in space, stuff like that. It's not until episode 4, which I mentioned in the previous video, that you start to learn something more about him. And even then, you don't actually care about 1. You care about Jace Corso. Jace Corso is way more interesting than 1. 1 is just, oh, well, he paid someone, or he put a lot of effort into trying to look like this person. That's cool, I guess, but I would rather more try and understand who this Jace Corso guy is. He's just much more interesting. So 1 is a very unusual character for me. I really don't, honestly, I don't like him. He's just so boring, which is disappointing, but it's, it's the way it is. 2, you find out, is really good at, or is talented at piloting the ship, piloting the Raza, as the ship is called. She just seems to instinctively know how to pilot the ship and how to repair it, how to keep it in order, so on and so forth. And this really does allow her the ability to kind of take control, take leadership, which I found was pretty good. She really does. She really is portrayed as the strong, independent woman, potentially with a military background, kind of thing. Just a very and I will be referencing Firefly, the TV series Firefly, a lot in throughout this series, probably just because they are alike in so many ways. So, kind of in that sense, 2 is kind of portrayed as Dark Matter's Zoe Washburn, in the sense that she can handle herself. She's not worried about what other people think of her. She's loyal to the crew, and she's always dependable, and she knows how to take care of the ship. Is just all around way more useful in every situation that the crew ever comes across, which is already a million times better than 1 is. Then you also get into the fact that she appears to have martial arts skills, and she seems to know her way navigating through, like, not necessarily diplomacy, but kind of like negotiations between third parties, which in and of itself is quite interesting for me, that she knows how to do that, that she's so good at it. These are all things that add layers to her character, which 1 didn't have. So for all the mistakes that, or for all of the missed opportunities, for all the nothingness that is in 1, it's made up for in 2, in my eyes. 3 is portrayed as the dark, brooding kind of character who keeps his cards close to his chest. He doesn't really let other people find out what he's thinking until he's completely thought it through and he's come up with an answer or a solution. He plays his cards close to his chest, and he waits for an outcome that will be advantageous for him. And he does a pretty good job of portraying that. He does a pretty good job of just kind of keeping you guessing as to what his motives are and as to what he's going to be doing. And that's a mixture of both good writing and good acting. Not only from him, but also from his fellow actors as well. They do a good job of reacting to basically his non-reactions. For characters like his, it really is the other characters that make him who he is. It's less about how he reacts to something, it's more about how they react to his reaction or his non-reaction. And so it's a good work all around by everyone to kind of make his character who he is, make him interesting, because without that, he would just be a person who didn't talk very much. So it is a good character in my eyes. They pulled it off fairly well. So while he's searching the ship, he finds a training dojo, and it's filled with all kinds of martial arts weapons, including katanas, nunchucks, swords, staves, whatever, just filled with a bunch of things, and he immediately just picks them up and starts moving through some katas, which I say katas just because that's the term that I know, that's the term that I've used, but there are a bunch of other terms, basically just techniques, techniques and basically just steps that you follow, and he starts going through them, and he's very efficient, he's very fluid, clearly he's done it before, so you basically find out that he's really good with weaponry, he's really good with weapons and martial arts, and, this adds not much of a layer, honestly. It's a very superficial kind of, talent or ability, but on the other hand, the fact that he knows martial arts, and he seems to be so dedicated to it, does allude to the fact, does prelude to the fact that he might have a history with a culture which is very steeped in history, very steeped in tradition, very steeped in discipline kind of thing, very, very focused on honor. So that does add a kind of, is that where he's from? Is that kind of, is that going to have an effect on what goes on in the series? So it is interesting. And by the way, I just realized right now that I said that this was 3. I went from 1, 2, and then I said 3, but I started discussing 4. So I just talked about 4 right there. That was 4 that I was talking about. So 3, I just kind of skipped over him in my mind because, or I just skipped over him now because I tend to skip over him in my mind. He's basically a worse Jane, if you think about it like that. He's just not as likable. There's nothing really to like about him. He's not really funny. He doesn't develop any kind of relationship with anyone on the crew, and he's basically just there to be muscle and have a good ability with guns. That's kind of it. He's just like 1, he's boring. He's less boring because he has this talent with guns and he's able to contribute more on missions and more on encounters that they have, but other than that, he's just boring. He's just exactly what he appears to be. And when you have just like cold cut mercenaries like that, sure, it might be truer to how mercenaries are in that world or in that universe, in that reality, but it's just not interesting. It's not fun. You have to kind of toe the line between reality, like what could happen, and what is interesting, what is something that people might care about. Because right now he's not a character that anyone would care about. So I already talked about 4. 5 I'm going to mention last. So I'm going to talk about 5 last. So 6 you find out has an ability, or is naturally good at piloting the shuttle, which is called the Marauder. So he pilots the Marauder, and that's basically all you really learn about him. That's all you learn about him at all. And it's just, that's basically his character. He pilots the Marauder, and every once in a while he has a conversation with 5. He has a kind of attempted father-daughter conversation with 5 kind of thing. That's kind of all his character is. He is portrayed as a character with having better morals, with being on the side, kind of like siding with 1 a lot when it comes to decisions and making the right decision. But that's all it is. He's just a lesser version of 1 when it comes to morals and when it comes to doing the right thing. So, like, all you really know about him is that he pilots the Marauder, and every once in a while he talks with 5, and that's about it. So he's not quite interesting either. And then you get to 5, and I'm probably going to spend a little bit of time talking about 5, because 5 deserves the time to talk about her. So 5 is a character who, well, first off, I'll go with the obvious one. The obvious one is she's good with electronics. She knows how to fix she knows how to fix machinery that gets broken. She knows how to create new gadgets out of old equipment, out of old materials. And she knows how to play with the wiring of the ship and, fix it so that it does certain things, rewire the ship so that, or rewire the controls so that they're a little more efficient, stuff like that. She's good with electronics. That's who her character is. That's the obvious part. And then what should have been the not obvious part, but was made obvious, was that she has something different about her. And the first moment you start to find out about it is in a scene when she's talking with 2. And I believe it's in the it's either in the pilot or it's in the third episode. I don't remember, and that's the thing. I need to watch them. So I watch. I just said I watch in the third episode or in the pilot. I don't remember, but she talks with two, and she mentions that she's been having weird dreams, and that alone is enough to pique one's curiosity, or is enough to pique mine, because dreams are a good segue, or are a good way to branch off to many different routes that you want to take. Um, having even if you don't do anything with the dream world itself, um, which is, yeah, even if you don't end up doing anything with the dream world itself, it keeps the watcher, or it keeps the spectator guessing as to what route they're going to take, as to how it's going to affect, what kind of role, what kind of part it's going to play in everything. So I like dreams. I really like dreams because they always have a sense of mystery, like, oh, is it real, or is it just a dream, or is it a vision, kind of thing. So she mentions that she's been having weird dreams. And she talks about how she's with her brother, and her brother and herself are running from people, I believe. And they turn around, and she mentions that she kills all of them, and there's just blood everywhere, and she just goes off into this like 2-minute diatribe about these dark, twisted things that she does to these people as she kills them, and just talking about stuff like that. And then she does this whole I hope we have dinner soon, I'm hungry, kind of thing, like, oh, it's no big deal. And that was good. I liked that part, but it was all just made too obvious, because she mentioned that even though they were her dreams, she thought that they were memories and they weren't hers. That she was reliving someone else's memories in her dreams. And that would have been enough for me. Honestly, I would have been happy with the statement, I've been having weird dreams. They're memories, and they're not my own. I don't know whose they are, but I'm reliving them in my dreams. That would have been enough for me. And then I would have just had her say, I hope we're having dinner soon, I'm hungry. That would have been enough for me. I would have loved that so much. That would have been so good. And it's just... But they didn't do that. They decided to add way too much detail. They decided to talk about it way too much. And get into too much detail, and it took the mystery out of it. Kind of thing. Like, less is more in these situations, in my opinion. And then the second time that her character is portrayed as being mysterious, as being a big question mark, is definitely at the end of the pilot. I talked about it in the previous video. At the end of the pilot, everybody finds out that they're basically mercenaries for hire, and that, rather than coming to help the colonists, they've come to kill them. So they've got huge rap sheets including piracy, theft, murder, smuggling, etc., etc. Like, they're bad people, they're bad criminals. But it's only 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6 who have these rap sheets. 5 isn't there. 5 isn't shown having a rap sheet. 5 isn't shown to have a criminal record. And in the second episode, they mention it. Android goes to talk to 5. And she mentions to 5 that she's noticed that she is unsatisfied, that she's disappointed, or that she's sad, or that she's scared, kind of thing, like she's in a bad mood. And 5 mentions that it's because, well, I just feel like I wish I fit in more. I wish that I knew that I was supposed to be here. Everyone else You know, even though they found out all these bad things that they've done in the past, at least they know that they're supposed to be here. I'm not on there. I'm not on the crew's log. I'm just a big question mark. You know, like, why am I here? And it was way too obvious that, like, that shouldn't have been in there. Like, when my family and I watched the pilot together, and my family stopped watching it, but I kept watching it, but my family and I watched the pilot together, and literally, the moment that we saw that, 1 through 4 and 6 had criminal records, as their crew logs and as their personnel files, all of us immediately, the second we saw that, went, "Where's 5? Like, that's weird. Why isn't 5 there? Shouldn't she be there?" And so we had already reached this conclusion, and then in the second episode, in the next episode, they mentioned it again, which, like, come on. It takes everything away from it. You have to give the audience a little benefit of the doubt. Everyone can come to the conclusion and realize that 5 wasn't there. 5 wasn't a part of it. Everyone can tell that, and everybody was wondering if that was a thing, if that was something that was going to be a big thing in the future. Everyone was thinking that. And yet they felt the need to mention it anyway, which really just did take the mystery out of it all, because the second that you do that is the second that people realize they won't need to actually think about the series. Because the question that they ask themselves, the question that they're asking about the show and about the characters, is answered, like, broadly, is answered in such an obvious and is answered in such a fully detailed way, in such an obvious way, that there's not really any point in thinking about the show, because you know that in a few episodes the answer is going to be there, and you'll be like, "Oh, that's why. Okay. Good thing I didn't spend any time thinking about that, because it would have just been a waste of time." And that's exactly the problem that I have with it, is we should be thinking about the characters. That, like, the biggest thing for growing attachments to the characters is trying to figure out who they are with them, rather than just having the series tell them. I would much rather be completely wrong about every single character and find out who they are with them, rather than have everything told to me without my having to do anything whatsoever. It's just, it was way too obvious, it was way too soon, and it really showed that the series did not think that the audience could come up with these conclusions by themselves, could come up with these questions by themselves. And that was just a shame. So that's going to be it for this episode. Next episode, I'm going to start getting back into... It's the end for this video. Next video, I'm going to start getting into the next episodes. So this was just a quick take on the characters, getting everything fleshed out, because I know I missed a lot of stuff in the first episode, in the first video. So that being said, I'm going to see you guys in another video. I'll see you later. Bye.